Okay, I'll do a quick intro and then leave the floor to Paul Blocker mainly. Thanks everyone for joining this meeting, which is the first public meeting on the idea of a European Citizen Initiative on democracy or on strengthening democracy as an additional follow-up to the potential reformative power of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Paul Blocker will explain better than me the work that had been done so far by the Coalition Citizens Takeover Europe in collaboration with Eumans on a draft text on this European Citizen Initiative. On my side, I just wanted to briefly introduce this meeting to contextualize it in a broader project that at the moment two organizations, Eumans and European Alternatives, but also in collaboration with Citizens Takeover Europe, we are trying to carry on. In the light of the next year wave of democracy attention on the European elections and the new European Commission with Eumans and European Alternatives, we started to work on a broader project that aims to launch synchronization of European, pan-European actions, mainly through participatory democracy, on democracy, ecology, and liberties, to try and inject as much civic power as possible into the electoral campaign of 2024. We have identified the European Citizen Initiative as, although a weak instrument, but still the only official instrument available for groups of citizens that want to mobilize and organize campaigns, as a way to synchronize these demands in a pan-European government civic proposal somehow. So there is in discussion a lot of different potential European citizen initiatives, which will be discussed mainly in person, but also online at the end of this week in Dansk, Poland, for a first experiment of a citizen summit among activists, citizens, and groups that identify not only the demands of democracy, ecology, and freedoms, but also the need of activating democratic instruments of participation as something that can hold together a new wave of European activism and campaigning at a transnational level. With the Coalition Citizens Takeover Europe, we started to work on the idea of a European Citizen Initiative on democracy as such. I will leave Paul Blocker to introduce the work that had been done so far. And then some of you already saw the text, participated in some previous meetings. We thought it was important to have a moment of analysis of this potential European Citizen Initiative, not only on the legal matters that we're trying to put together, but also on the potential that this initiative could have in terms of carrying on the many demands that different groups across Europe are carrying on after the Conference on the Future of Europe, in particular when it comes to the reforms needed for increasing civic participation and the impact of democratic initiatives carried on by citizens or with citizens at the center. So I'll leave the floor to Paul Blocker to further deep dive, and then we move on.
Okay, thank you so much, Virginia. Well, I'm honored to be put in this position to speak about this initiative. I think it's a really interesting, timely, and important initiative. So very briefly, explaining a little bit how we have been working in the last couple of weeks. So there has been the original draft for an ECI on democracy, on the democratization of the EU, developed by Eumans, which we then took as a basis to, in a certain way, combine it with some of the, let's say, proposals that stem from Citizens Takeover Europe Coalition, which has been, as many of you will know, monitoring closely the Conference on the Future of Europe And so one of the things we've been trying to do is to put this particular ECI on democracy in the context of the follow-up to the Conference on the Future of Europe. I mean, the Conference of the Future of Europe has developed 49 proposals. They have gone through a plenary. They have been okayed by the institutions in a final report. And so it seems to us very difficult to just dismiss some of these proposals out of hand. And so that's one basis of the draft text that we are currently developing. But the most important part is perhaps that we've been trying to put together a number of specific claims, number of specific demands, like a permanent citizens assembly, the idea of a pan-European referendum. We've tried to put them together in a kind of ecosystemic proposal for democratic change. And so if you have seen the document, which is in development, it's still a draft, we are by now proposing 6 different points, starting from an EU digital identity to go to a permanent digital platform, which is then to be related to the existing ECI initiative, which we propose then to link to citizens' assemblies as well, and with the final step in the case of a successful citizens' assembly, etc., a pan-European referendum. This is not the moment to explain why we do this, but it's one way of proposing a series of changes that, putting them together, would correct problems of single propositions, like a citizens' assembly is a mini public and so lacks broad European visibility, etc. If you link it then to referenda, etc., it becomes a different type of democratic instrument. And the final proposal we discussed Friday to perhaps put into the ECI is the call for a convention. But and here we get to the heart of the matter. I'm really glad that Professor Ziller is with us. We invited him to one of the meetings of the CTOE coalition some time ago as well. And that has been, by the way, very useful also for developing this particular ECI, because it seems to me we have a number of limitations. Of course, we need to mobilize as many organizations as we can, but we also simply have the legal limitations, not only of the treaties, but I would say of the interpretation of the treaties. For instance, by the Commission, a very limiting understanding of what implementing the treaties means, basically claiming that you cannot propose treaty change, which I think in the light of COFI, of the Conference on the Future of Europe, is particularly problematic. And so, yeah, maybe a way to go forward is to discuss a number of these legal problems, but maybe Virginia, just tell me, maybe you also want to take a step back to talk about the substance. What is it actually that we want to have in the proposal? Do we really want it in this type of organic manner, or do we also want to include, for instance, some people in CTOE suggest this, transnational lists or things like that? We currently, to explain, set up an ecosystemic approach that looks at direct democracy mostly. It doesn't really talk about representative democracy, doesn't talk about right to initiative of the parliament or stuff like that.
In my opinion, if everyone has seen the text, you can refer to the one at the top of the document, which is the revised version proposed by Citizens Takeover Europe. We kept the original version by Eumans just as a terms of reference, as sort of old version and new version. The aim is to try to work on the Citizens Takeover Europe approach, because somehow it's first round of feedback that we got, and it's based on the idea of using the ECI also to push forward for some of the demands of the Conference on the Future of Europe specifically. So somehow to back up politically this ECI into that context. Maybe I will open the floor for some first round of questions, comments, or further integration. So we keep it more as much interactive as possible rather than keep explaining. I don't know if though Marco Cappato, Lorenzo Mineo, and Perduca, who were in the original Eumans team who worked on the idea, want to integrate these. Okay, Marco Perduca and then Lorenzo Mineo.
Yeah, sorry about the camera off, but I'm on the move. I think if we could make a little extra effort and expand on the idea of a digital identity to the concept of digital citizenship and European citizenship in particular, if it's not too troubling to expand the possibility of using the digital domain also, if we want to speak about transnational lists, but certainly to participatory democracy stuff, then to see how that fits into what has been written so far. And thank you very much for the re-elaboration of the draft. I think it wouldn't hurt. Then we can decide if to go ahead with a more comprehensive ECI that speaks about also the possibility of using this digital identity in promoting lists, or also in using it as we're trying to do now also with the activation of the UN Committee on Civil and Political Rights after the list that we promoted last summer was denied. We're using also some arguments that in fact could go in the direction of having European civil society ask the European Commission to do whatever it's in their power, according to the interpretation of the treaties, to promote, to expand what is already foreseen for commercial or economic use of digital identity into the political domain. And so a referendum, it's okay. Any other citizens' assemblies are okay, but also why not political participation?
Lorenzo, Mineo?
Thank you, Virginia. A few comments because I see some changes, of course, from the previous version we worked on with Professor Gianluca as well. I think, to be honest, one of the things said by Marco, I agree on, is about the changing of the definition from European digital signature on the current version to European digital identity or citizenship. I think this would be very important because to use the word European digital identity would mean to be on the same page with the current debate within the European Commission. Ursula von der Leyen used in particular this word, and also citizenship could be okay. I think it's maybe more appealing even for a potential signer, but this is just a question of wording. Apart of that, I think that we need to cut a little bit on the text because we are over the maximum length of 1,100 characters. So we need to cut some words in this text. And then my third point is about a proposal that I made in last meeting. Since there are this discussion on treaty change, and according to Paul, we should even try to risk to insert potential point that imply treaty change, such as the EU-wide referendum and permanent citizen assembly. Well, I think we could, as I said last time, prepare two versions, one including treaty change and another without it. So after the decision of the office of the Commission, we will decide what to do and which version to use. But in this way, we would avoid to lose some time. Yeah, that's basically my reflections. For the rest, I think this is a good text.
Professor Ziller.
Yes. I wonder if I have the same text as you, because I see only 5 points on mine, but that doesn't matter. The substance is, it's the one I downloaded. You sent us a link to download it. It doesn't matter. The content is obviously the same. I think it's important to separate issues which are linked in substance, but which are separate in the sense that some can be solved without any treaty change and others with treaty change. And if you insist on the treaty change, you give a good argument for procrastinating to have a deal with it in the Commission. Yes, we'll do it, but we have to change the treaties. So the three things are the digital citizenship or digital signature, which is not exactly the same. Because we have, I don't know in all member states, but we have digital signature already through different means. And it's something which can be used in order to access platforms. And more than digital signature, I think what is important is the digital identity in the technical sense, which again, I don't know in the 27 member states, but I'm French and Italian. I have my French digital identity and have my Italian one, and they are functioning extremely well. It's very difficult for people who are not used to the internet, but that's another story, we know it. But who people like us who are used to it, it's very easy. And I don't see any problem why there couldn't be first a recommendation, but then as soon as possible, some kind of directive in order to oblige member states to give access to the platform through their national digital identity. A European digital identity as such is something more difficult. Legally speaking, it would need a regulation, and I'm not even sure you find easily a basis, but it's technically extremely difficult. I mean, I'm working a lot on those things, and the interoperability of systems is a mess at present. There are things which function well, things which function not. So again, let's not give reasons to procrastinate. I think it's better to say the issue is that we need to have a digital platform, and for this you do not need any treaty change, certainly not. Yeah, I would recommend having a regulation, because we have a lot of digital platforms which have been created without a specific legal basis and for the internal market, etc. And we know that it's good to start as soon as possible, but there comes a point where there are difficulties. I'm thinking, for instance, about the platform which is used since 20 years for Solvit. Who does not know Solvit here? Well, so I suppose you all know it. Solvit is something which is functioning extremely well, but with a very, very small result. I mean, the number of cases which are treated by Solvit is reduced. And there are some issues with the platform Solvit for the simple reason that it's a perfectly it's based on goodwill, and so I think one should, as a matter of fact, start with the digital platform. We have to stay to do it. The sooner the better, with the perspective that sometime there would be a regulation, but that it's not needed to have first a regulation. Let's start a digital platform. Let's push the Commission to have it working, and that's the first step. The second step is that this digital platform should be accessible to any European citizen through his national digital identity. Again, thinking of the Solvit platform, any body in the EU can access the Solvit platform to ask for something. but it's only the members of Soviet network who have access to the content of the platform. So it's all technically not that complicated, but it needs investment. Just to give you an example, in the present system for Solvit, which is important and is flagged as something which is fantastic by the Commission itself, you have about 3 people working on it in the Commission itself, which is ridiculous. So always think about this, have something which is not too complicated to install, but which needs a commitment, a political commitment, to put some resources, which is mainly have some people to work on it. Not half a person, but 3, 4, 5 persons. Right, so digital platform, access for citizens to the digital platform with their digital identity. In the future, if there is also a European digital identity, that's better. But if we wait for this, again, procrastinating is the easiest way. So that I would say is the order. The third thing is the referendum, where if you want any referendum which has any legal value, you need treaty change. That's obvious. I don't want to go into the detail. You could imagine whatever consultation, digital consultations are possible, but if you want something which is obligatory in the sense that member states have to provide with the resource to make it, but even more in the text, the outcome, an obligatory pan-European referendum, that's even worse. Do not forget that there are few countries who have a good experience of referendum. The Dutch have done a lot of stupidities with referendum. For instance, the first stupidity was on the constitutional treaty, and the second, which was worse, was on the association treaty with Ukraine. We are not Switzerland. So saying that there would be a goal to arrive to a Europe-wide referendum, I've even published on this with Paolo Polzano 20 years ago, but it's not easy. And there will be a lot of objections. So again, I think it's not because there are objections that you should not propose it, but not write a document which gives good reasons for procrastination. Oh yes, good idea, let's have a European referendum. This will be on the agenda of the next treaty reform. Nobody knows when it will start, and even less when it will be implemented, because do not forget that there are the referendums, that's the point, in Ireland and so other countries which are hidden behind this. Right, these were the points I wanted to make.
Thank you very much. Marco Cappato.
Thank you, Virginia. Good evening to everybody. Well, I think that Jacques Ziller made some very important point to be taken in consideration. Probably a less direct language, like a mandatory referendum, would incur in the same result, but at least could be, I mean, maybe the outcome would be less sure or less less likely that it would be rejected by the Commission. Personally, maybe it is a marginal thing, but even lowering the threshold of 1 million signature on one side is a treaty change in a way, and I don't think, I mean, it would be really the point if there would be a good way of informing the citizens and and granting them an easy way to sign, at the end, 1 million signatures can even not be that many. Of course, nowadays they are too many because the condition, the context in which people are, the promoters are, have to operate is really a difficult context, because nobody knows anything about European Citizens Initiative. But I don't know if I would add this threshold issue as one of the reasons more for the Commission in order not to take into consideration the not to accept, not to admit the European Citizen Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Sarah Handel, Mehr Demokratie, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to just say something to that last point, because I think it's important that we distinguish two functions of the European Citizen Initiative. I mean, one is agenda setting, which just means that the population wants to put a topic on the agenda of the parliament. And another one is to combine it with next steps. And as I also think that 1 million signatures is too less to say we have citizen initiative and then a referendum following on that, that would be like too low a threshold actually for such a big process. So that's why I think it's really smart to combine it with the citizen assemblies. So you have agenda setting and you can actually initiate a citizen assembly on a topic, which will make the topic more, which will deepen the quality on the topic through the assembly, because you have multi-perspective people who will look at the topic and will be maybe able to formulate a good question that would be suitable for a referendum. But then I think there should actually be somehow another threshold for really initiating the referendum. And maybe the citizen assembly could be the deciding body, because I don't think it should be the parliament or the commission or any other power institution. But I think there should be another mechanism in between, like the citizen assembly and then a referendum, if it may. We all know how unrealistic it is that we get referendums. But what we put now forward is a structure of making people think of how it could work, a structure of participation that actually leads to tangible outcomes that really make a difference. And I think we in this initiative, we should show the whole structure until the end. That's why I think it's important to put a referendum, but not really because it's something that we can achieve anytime soon. But my point was that after the citizen assembly, that I would make obligatory before every referendum, that they maybe decide if the question they talk about is suitable for a referendum. Or maybe we can put, if 90% of the people in the assembly agree to the outcome, that then you can make a referendum. Like, I'm not sure about the threshold there, but I would put a condition at the end of the assembly which decides if a referendum is necessary or suitable for that topic in discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. Paul?
Yeah, just one thing. It seems to me that it's extremely important to think strategically. And so what is it exactly that we want to get out of this? But also, I think we need to know as much as we can about how these processes work. Like, one thing that seems to be possible, but I haven't found confirmation yet in research on ECIs, is that a proposal like this one has 6 points. The Commission might not register, reject a number of these points, but not necessarily all of them. So you might want to think about a kind of ultimately a fairly radical number of proposals within the ECI that then risk, which could, and that's another point I wanted to make, which could in itself be important. As far as I know, the General Court hasn't yet spoken in any way about whether treaty change is possible through the ECI, whether implementing the treaties might also mean Article 48.2, starting up a convention. And so I think that could be another way of thinking about using an ECI to get clarity about whether citizens have the right to use an ECI to address fundamental dimensions of EU law. It is indeed treaty law, primary law. And so, I mean, that's a number of things I think we need to get clarity upon. I mean, we could either do, it depends really on how the Commission now works since the new regulation. And so we could either do one proposal with more and less radical elements in it, or we could do, as Lorenzo said, have two different ECIs. If one is shut down, we still have the other that is much less radical. That seems to me, at least we need to get clarity on it, because that helps a lot in how we formulate things.
Jacques.
Yes, following on to what Paul just said, I think it's very important to have different steps and to make sure that the first steps are feasible, even if the latest one are not. Part of it, indeed, is what can be asked in a citizens' initiative. The experience of the very successful initiatives is that you have initiatives with a lot of proposals, and so the Commission can choose what is feasible and what it wants to do. That's the first thing. The question whether a European Citizens Initiative is could be used for treaty change is tricky. At first sight, no, because of the text of treaty. But if you think about it, the treaty says on matters where citizens consider that a legal act of the Union is required for the purpose of implementing the treaties. Now, legal acts, it's not saying a binding legal act. So one could very much argue that what citizens ask is that the Commission or the Council adopt a recommendation to open a procedure for treaty change. In this sense, it could be done. But obviously, it should be the last point. You know, like what attorneys do is always give a lot of arguments, even contradictory ones, if saying, well, this is the first thing. If this doesn't work, you have this. But you should construct it the other way around. Start with the easy one, the thing which doesn't even need a regulation or a directive, where the Commission can act on itself. Then things where the Commission should make some kind of proposal of a directive of regulation, and then what needs treaty change. As I wrote, I think also reducing the threshold, you cannot put it in the same document, because it's already a very low threshold indeed, if you think about 450 million inhabitants. Last thing, there is some experience about those initiatives. In Spain, we had a successful, not on the outcome, we don't know yet, but successful citizens initiative to adopt a law, and they have some experience. In France, we have a mechanism which has not yet worked, which some have tried to use, but was never successful. So the only really successful experiences are in Switzerland. And as we know, Switzerland is not part of the EU, but it's not a reason. I mean, talking with some Swiss experts would be useful, because they know a number of things. Part of it is that successful referenda are always on topics which are not big things, but things which matter to everyday life.
I will just add some, not in the facilitator role, but in the political role, a couple of additional inputs that I think are important. One, I mentioned in some working group, but still relevant. I think the point on interoperability and digital identities that Professor Zille was mentioning, I think it will be interesting to position it, cover from the local to the transnational level, passing to the national level. So somehow to have a way that the EU approach defines the standard of participation also for the regional or municipal level of democratic participation. I think it's important because the EU standard then can positively impact what happens at the local level. So I think this is an angle that needs to be included. And then there is a point that was in the original proposal that Professor Sguero added, which was to set up within the DG of the European Commission some participatory bodies somehow. I mean, Professor Sguero can explain better that probably what I understood, but I think having something in the text that gives more accountability within the different DG of the European Union when it comes to the agenda setting value of the European Citizen Initiative can also be quite helpful, because otherwise what happens also politically speaking is that the European Citizen Initiative is basically nothing until it gets the 1 million signatures, and the number of cases where this happens is very low. Whilst I think thinking about the EU institutions to become more permeable by participatory democracy processes and to have some bodies within each DG that needs to keep an eye on what happens from the European Citizen Initiatives front, it would be quite an interesting innovation. I don't know if, Gianluca, this was the rationale behind your proposal, but I think finding a way to give more injection point of legitimacy to the European Citizen Initiatives within the other DGs and not only the one that takes care of the ECI, bureaucratically speaking, it's quite interesting, although it's going to take some space, but it's definitely true, as it is definitely true for the citizens' assemblies, like who is in charge of the citizen assemblies, who decides on which topics, what happens within the DGs that are directly affected by the decision of a citizen assembly. So the more ecosystemic we are also in the interinstitutional approach to participatory democracy, I think the stronger is the proposal if we have to dream big somehow in a visionary type of European Citizen Initiative. Paul, then Jacques again, and then Gianluca.
Yeah, just one thing about, I mean, one alley seems to me to be, what is it, the Article 25 indent 2 of the Treaty on the Function of the EU, because for instance, in the Let Me Vote ECI proposal, that's taken as a legal basis. And I mean, that can be, I guess, a certain way of thinking about treaty amendment without invoking the convention method. And so I really wonder, I'm not an expert on this, so it would be useful if we could gather as much as we can expertise on to what extent we can use this. So the expansion of the rights of your EU citizenship, could this also be used, for instance, of backing up a more robust European Citizens Assembly? Or could you use this for a European referendum? It seems to be a bit tricky, because if you would expand the citizenship rights of EU citizens by giving them the right to a European referendum, it seems to me that you would also need to directly change the treaties and create the instrument of a referendum in Article 11.5 or so, I don't know. But that's my limited reading of the things. But I just thought maybe Professor Ziller has something to add on this, whether this 25 indent 2 could be useful.
I wanted to react first on the idea of having some kind of body in DGs. I would certainly not recommend it as such, because the answer is it's none of your business. I mean, ask the Commission to do something, yes, but say, oh, you should have a body. The way to formulate it is not that much in DGs, but something like using the systems which is already existing for green books in order to get more specific input from citizens. And thinking, again, the Green Books is something which functions. The only problem is that usually people who respond to Green Books are only the interested parties. But still, the system exists, and I think it's good to say, well, you have a good system, you should further expand it. The second thing which can be said to the Commission is, in the same way as you consult in the preparation of any kind of action, you consult experts, national experts, experts on content, that you also have something which links to citizens assemblies or something like this. So I would rather formulate it that way than say in the DGs. That's the first thing. The other thing, again, about the European referendum, I think it's good to put it in the paper, but saying as the eventual, in the sense of the English sense, at the end of the road, there might be a referendum, and we know that first, this will need treaty change. Second, it is a complicated matters because you have to have thresholds, etc., etc. But put it as a further goal, but not for immediately. Again, thinking strategically is the first step, the easy step to do, which you cannot refuse because you have no good argument. And this will lead, if things go better after some experience, etc., etc.
Russell's well.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. Hello, everyone. Just a quick remark on the DG officer. I get the point of Professor Ziller, he's right. But that's also the point why the Green Book system hasn't worked very well thus far. If you look at the data from the Court of Auditors, they have analyzed the have your say consultations. That's exactly as you said, that there's always the same stakeholders, corporate stakeholders, commenting on proposals, but the idea is quite different. So the principle is different. So I'm not insisting on having a new structure. Again, I get your point. I think you're right. I'm thinking at something that will make a uniform response from HDG that will have an interest in having the voice of citizens and not of the usual suspects that contribute to the openings that exist. And I'm thinking at the quite unsuccessful, but I think it was a visionary perspective of 2 governments ago in Italy when the Italian government created a minister for public participation. That again was unsuccessful, but the idea was precisely that, to have a body that will coordinate and make horizontal uniform answers in the feedbacks from citizens.
Thank you.
I think what is needed is to find allies in the Secretariat General, because the DGs, they are the strong DGs who are not interested necessarily by this. The DG who is taking care of Citizens Initiative is a little bit on the side. The important body here is the Secretariat General. And as soon as you say coordination, it cannot be done otherwise than by the Secretary General. And I would say it's suggesting to do something like I've put it in the discussion, something like the checklist for subsidiarity, which has become bureaucratized, but which is there. As for any proposal coming from a DG, they must respond to a checklist on subsidiarity. And there should be, and it's easy to suggest, why not have a checklist on democratic participation? Have there been assemblies? Has there been this or that? That's something which is feasible and which is not extremely expensive, but again, expensive not in money, but needs allies in the General Secretariat and in the legal service of the General Secretariat, which you can find.
Thank you. I would like to keep the meeting under the hour, so to close it at 6. Is there anyone that didn't speak so far that wants to say something? I also remind to the Italians that you can also speak in Italian. We have the interpreters connected, so if someone feels more comfortable to speak in Italian, you can do so. So first the floor to the not speakers so far. Verena.
Hello, yeah, I'm Verena. Sorry, I'm injecting myself into this at a very late stage, and I'm usually wearing the hat of a communicator also. And I know it's early in the process, but maybe we want to have in mind at this early stage what would be the headline for this citizen initiative. What would be the sort of selling proposition? I know this is very tedious to think because here is a round of really amazing experts, but we have to make sure, or it seems to me that this is a language and these are ideas now that have arrived very much in the sort of insider world of all these activist groups and all these NGOs that have been working on this. But if we want to get some broader blockbuster moment around this, maybe in a first step, maybe there could be this idea of asking for something that is, and I haven't found it yet, but the idea around citizen proving deliberation and decision making, a bit in the context that Sarah had mentioned it before. Before this is going to be a very specified bundle of measures that we would have to be very happy with all the insider and professional NGOs signing this to ever get to enough signatures. So maybe I know this is provoking and tough work. But I always try to invite us to think things from the very end, like we would want more than 1 million signatures for this text, right? So when we have 1,000,100, how did we get there? And what was the selling headline in our national and other media? Because I think this is what we want to approach this through.
Thank you, Verena. Can I maybe ask you, are you also from Mer Democratia or from another organization? Just to put you in a...
I don't know why I got this. I have been involved with like European alternatives,
okay.
But I'm not sure whether I got this invitation through.
I guess from Niccolo maybe.
Yeah, Niccolo probably.
Okay, cool. Just to thank you. Sorry, which is not the best way to answer to a comment, but just to understand where you were coming from, because as I was saying at the beginning, this effort is a specific European Citizen Initiative on democracy to also try to be synchronized with other European citizen initiatives more on specific topics.
Yeah.
So I think part of the power of this would be this combination with matters that are more concrete. It's not true because democracy is super concrete to me, but let's say more, I don't know, cannabis legalization is a specific topic that some people refer to that. So I think on one side, what you are saying is covered by the synchronized approach to a certain extent, but on the other hand, trying to start to think about the message is quite important, of course. So I see Jacques Zillier is sharing some potential slogan or references on this. I know that this is for sure the first meeting of our series. Maybe I use 2 minutes before the conclusions to remember that, so from Friday to Sunday, we're going to have the Citizen Summit in Gdansk, which can also be followed online. It's an opportunity where we will discuss the broader synchronization approach. In particular, on the morning of Saturday, there is the session on democracy, is from 10 to 11:15. So with the help of Paul and Michele Fiorillo, we are going to expand on this discussion. So that is another moment maybe where we want to try to have an approach that is also on the type of campaigns that can be done on these topics, which I think it's somehow also what Verena is suggesting. And of course, we will need a communication task force that runs in parallel to the networking efforts that we need to do. Okay, I see Alessandro Talese, who is for the migration meeting, but I don't know if you have a take also on democracy, Alessandro. We are finishing the previous meeting, which is the one on the European Citizen Initiative on democracy, and Alessandro is a promoter of an ongoing European Citizen Initiative at the moment. So I don't know if you joined on purpose ahead of the other meeting.
Ok, no, avevo fatto una prova per vedere se funzionava tutto. E...
Ok, ci sei.
Va bene, a dopo.
Grazie. Okay, any other burning comments, reflections? On one layer we have the text, on one layer we have the legal strategy, so how hedgy we want to be, how much we want to risk a no from the Commission, and eventually how to use that no to a watered down version of the ECI or for some legal actions on that. This is a bit the line of that. And of course, the need of enlarging this potential coalition and the ecology of powers involved and affected by an ECI of democracy, and how this can be somehow leveraged to reach the 1 million signature. Given the goal would be to present this ECI before the European elections, to have it, to accompany that discourse.
May I make a suggestion? I don't know if it has ever been used, but trying to do in the same time in a European Citizens Initiative and petitions to the Parliament formally on the same topic, and informally contacts with MEPs. There are a lot of MEPs who are sympathetic to this, but also again thinking about the services of the Commission. It has to be extremely informal, but it's good to have it. And if any, in some member states, that's something which can be, if there can be pressure which comes from Commission, Parliament, Council members, it's more helpful than only the ECI and the Commission says no.
Yes, with the Marco Pato.
I just wanted to stress the idea that, in fact, a European digital citizenship is a more, let's say, political and maybe more catchy term and concept than simply the signature, which is a more technical issue. I don't know if we need to rephrase or to add, but I wouldn't discard the idea of insisting for the European digital citizenship as a dimension of what is already in the treaties, the European citizenship.
Okay, so I suggest, I mean, the document is open, so further integrations can be done, maybe under the form of comments when it comes to the text, but also in case you have any reference, documentation, material that you think can be helpful, or paragraphs that you want to write. I mean, just use the document as a living material that can help us to have all the contributions in one place. I'm gonna put in the chat again the link. Jacques, it's here. It's the first text in the document. And then I'd say we will further discuss this in Dansk, online, offline, on live, as someone says, on Saturday morning. And then after that, we will get back to you. Most likely there will be a phase where we need to, maybe each one of us, to identify additional people that we want to involve in the conversation, to have a larger discussion and pool of people that in principle agrees with the idea, so that we can see what can be done in the next steps. And yeah, exactly. See, Verena is all in the influencer mood. I think having an advertising during Eurovision on European Citizen Initiative is one of the dreams of Eumans, like a bit of public service there. So we can expand on also the strategies to promoting this. So please register to Dansk. In any case, I mean, there will be multiple sessions on the different topics of ECI, but also that is going to be also our first network of communication also on the whole process. So, I mean, it's a good way to be in the loop beside these thematic meetings. In half an hour, we meet at this same link for the one on migration. So if you are up for a second meeting, you can stay connected, or you can invite your migration friends over for the second part at 6:30. But in the meantime, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll be connected. Paul, myself, Lorenzo are leading this exercise, so contact us if you have any ideas or connection that you want to share with us. And thanks, everyone.
That's it.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.